welcome to AGK's Vinyl Life. I'm your host, Anthony K. And today's Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. And this week's episode was actually inspired by a live stream I did this past weekend, in which I had a number of guests on, and two of those guests were Mark Anthony K from the progressive metal band Projekt Gemineye. And I also had for the first time on my stream a young lady by the name of Neve, the prog nerd, who has had tremendous success in the vinyl community in the last month. And she is very big on prog, and her channel is focused mainly around prog music. And that whole stream we did, we talked about mostly prog on that stream, and it was about a 3-hour stream, and we talked mostly about prog. And I enjoyed that stream so much that it actually inspired this week's video. And I realized that I've done a lot of different things since I opened my channel here in the last year. I talk a lot about hard rock, metal, a lot of pop, a lot of classic rock, modern rock. You know, as people know, I listen to all genres of music and all decades of music from the 50s right through to 2021 here. New artists, old artists, new wave, punk, everything. But I've never really talked about prog so much. So I thought I would do a prog episode this week because I do love prog, and prog was definitely one of my earliest influences. There was a time when I listened to a lot of prog. Certainly when I was growing up as a teenager, I was heavily into the prog artists. I picked, I figure my top 15 prog artists and or / albums, and the majority of them being very underrated. That's right. I mean, the first 6 I will show here are very commonly known, commonly shown prog artists that are shown a lot in the vinyl community. And then I'm going to show about another 9 that are from artists that aren't really talked about so much, that are in the prog vein. Now, prog, of course, is short for progressive. When I grew up as a teenager and I worked in a record store for a short time, there wasn't all these subgenres that we have now. There was pop and rock. That was pretty much it in the stores. Pop and rock was one section. As the sections grew, there was actually progressive rock. In the store I was in, we actually did have a progressive rock section. But that progressive rock section had a lot of hard rock in it too, because you would find if you were delving through the progressive rock section in Sam's, you'd find groups like Deep Purple, which were really more hard rock, but at the time were lumped into that progressive rock category. Nowadays, here in 2021, there is progressive forms of a lot of different genres. There's, of course, progressive rock, progressive metal, progressive symphonic metal, progressive house, progressive trance, progressive EDM. But they all take their roots from the original progressive bands of the early 70s. So let's get on with it now. And the first artist I'm going to show, and like I said, the first 6 artists here are pretty commonly shown in the VC, but I'm going to show them really quickly, just burn through them really quick. Probably one of the most famous prog artists of all time, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, otherwise known as ELP. We just used to call him ELP when we were teenagers. We didn't go Emerson, Lake and Palmer. We just said ELP. This is ELP and their very first album, self-titled, and this was the album that got me into Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and probably got me into prog. I don't know. It's a long time ago. I don't know if it was Genesis that got me into prog first, or Jethro Tull, but certainly ELP was one of the earliest ones, and I absolutely love this album. I was on the ELP bandwagon right from their first album. Lucky Man was playing on the radio. I fell in love with Lucky Man, and the flip side of Lucky Man was Knife Edge, and so those two songs just blew me away. And of course I had to grab the album and then realized that Take a Pebble was just a masterpiece, and The Three Fates, and Tank. What a fantastic song, Tank. So Emerson, Lake and Palmer, their debut self-titled album, a prog masterpiece for sure. One of my top 15 favorites of all time. Second up is Genesis. Yes, Genesis. I was a huge Genesis fan, and I've talked about Genesis many times before, so I won't talk about them too much. And I've shown this album a couple times, though I do have the entire Genesis catalog. And as you can see, I've been to Genesis. This was a concert shirt. I've been to see Genesis probably, I think 5 or 6 times I've seen Genesis in concert. But certainly Genesis, the second of my favorite prog artists of all time. And I chose to show you one that doesn't get shown too much, even though I've shown this once before. And that is this album right here. This was a Japanese exclusive album. And this is The Story of Genesis. That's right, The Story of Genesis. And I chose to show this one because it's a comp. That's right, it's a comp. And nowadays I don't get as much time to listen to music, and having a big music collection, you know, obviously I've talked about it before, that Lamb Lies Down on Broadway is my favorite concept album of all time, and it's definitely a Prog masterpiece by Genesis, and is my favorite Genesis album, Lamb Lies Down, probably quickly followed by Selling England by the Pound. But I chose to show this one in today's video because if you're looking to get into Prog, and not too many people show this wonderful album that I have had since it came out and bought as an import many years ago. The Story of Genesis is a comp that covers their entire career from the Trespass album through to the Wind and Wuthering album. So through to the end of the Steve Hackett era. So it includes a number of tracks. And the thing that's great about this is because I get the best of both. The best of their albums in a short 2-record listen. Though there could have been more Lamb Lies Down on Broadway and Selling England by the Pound on this album, as we only have I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe from Selling England by the Pound, and Lamb Lies Down on Broadway's title track. But the earlier albums are really well represented in this, with The Knife from Trespass, The Musical Box from Nursery Crime, Watchers of the Skies from Foxtrot, the full Supper's Ready from Foxtrot, then like I said, I Know What I Like from Selling England, Lamb Lies Down from Lamb Lies Down, and then Dance on a Volcano, Squonk, and Ripples from A Trick of the Tail. Wonderful songs. The 11th Earl of Mar and Your Own Special Way from Wind and Wuthering. And my mistake, this actually went to And Then There Were Three. And then Burning Rope and Follow You, Follow Me from And Then There Were Three. I absolutely love this album. I absolutely love the pressing quality of these. I'm a big fan of Japanese pressings. So I absolutely love the pressing quality on that. Look at that fabulous Charisma label recreated in this Japanese press. And of course it came with a wonderful book as well. And like I said, I've shown this before. But The Story of Genesis by Genesis gives you probably the best years of Genesis. And I'm going to show one more. And though this is not Genesis, it is. And this is Steve Hackett. And this is a solo album from a performance from, I believe, 2016, 2014. This is a Genesis Revisited live at the Royal Albert Hall, performed by Steve Hackett. And this, too, is a wonderful representation of Genesis music done by Steve Hackett, with some wonderful lineup of musicians on this album, including a man by the name of Lee Pomeroy, which I'll be talking about later in this video. And this, of course, also gives you the best of Genesis and those same years that Story of Genesis album covers as well. And things are falling down here. So you've got Dance on a Volcano, Dancing with the Moonlit Night, Fly on a Windshield from Lamb Lies Down, Broadway Melody of 1974, Carpet Crawlers, Return of the Giant Hogweed, The Musical Box, Horizons, Unquiet Slumbers for the Sleepers, In That Quiet Earth, Afterglow, I Know What I Like, Firth of Fifth, Ripples, The Fountain of Telemachus, Supper's Ready, Watchers of the Sky, and Los Andos. And this is an absolutely spectacular performance, Steve Hackett. So yes, Genesis, my number 2 all-time favorite prog act, and those are 2 of my favorite Genesis albums out there, and ones that don't get shown in the VC. Number 3 in my list of common prog groups that you see shown a lot is, of course, Jethro Tull. People talk about and show Jethro Tull, and I've shown Jethro Tull before. I just very recently showed the prog masterpiece, Thick as a Brick. So I'm not going to show that today because I've shown Thick as a Brick before. And we see Aqualung shown all the time. Great prog albums. So I decided to show this one because I absolutely love this album. And this is live busting out, or bursting out is bursting, live bursting, Jethro Tull live bursting out from 77 or 78, 1978. This album came out, and I saw this tour, and this was recorded during the Heavy Horses tour. And the reason why I decided to show you this, and this is one of my favorite Tull albums. I love live albums, and this is a really good representation of Tull live. I saw this tour, and it was absolutely spectacular, and I loved it. And this is just a great representation, and it gives you a real cross-section of Tull's library to that date. And a lot of their, and this is a very proggy concert. No Lullaby, Sweet Dreams, Skating Away on the Thin Ice of the New Day, Jack and the Green, One Brown Mouse, New Day Yesterday. There's a flute solo, Songs from the Wood, Thick as a Brick is on here. A scaled down version, I think it's about a 15-minute version of Thick as a Brick. Hunting Girl, Too Old to Rock and Roll, Too Young to Die, Condrum, Minstrel in the Gallery, Cross-Eyed Married, and of course Aqualung, Locomotive Breath, and the fabulous Dam Busters March. Jethro Tull live, my third in my top 15 of, and this isn't in any particular order. These aren't ranked. I'm not going in any sort of ranking order. These are just my top 15 in random order. Prog, acts, and or albums. So Jethro Tull live. Number 4 in this pile is a band that everybody's well aware of, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about them or talking about this album, but definitely in that prog category, you can't forget Pink Floyd and their metal album. And this is, I think, one of their most proggy. I mean, people show Dark Side of the Moon all the time. And Animals, of course, people know Animals is my favorite Pink Floyd album, which is a very great prog album. This is metal, and I absolutely love metal. What a fantastic album. One of These Days, and Echo is worth the price of the album alone. Prog, another great, that's number 4 in my list of favorite prog artists and prog albums. Number 5 in my pile here is another group that's talked about a lot and shown a lot. They've been known as, you know, they were hard rock in the beginning, and then they became very prog, and they've moved through a lot of different sort of stages and genres in their music. Certainly the 2112 through to Moving Pictures area was very prog, and I'll talk about 2112 a little bit later, just touch on 2112 a little bit later. But a couple albums that I never show, and I've shown 2112 before, and I've shown Rush's debut album before, because as people know, Rush played at my school dance, my prom, when they had just released their first album. So I have a very old connection to Rush in that they played my prom. But of course became big, and 2112 would kind of lead them into that prog era. But 2 albums that I never show too much are, and the reason why I'm showing 2 albums from these guys is because I think these 2 albums go together to make one album, and that's A Farewell to Kings and Hemispheres by Rush. A Farewell to Kings first, then came Hemispheres, and the reason I say they go together is, of course, because on A Farewell to Kings we had Cygnus X1 closing out the album, a 10-minute song, and on Hemispheres we had Cygnus X1 Book 2, which was the entire first side of Hemispheres. Cygnus X1 Book 2 called Hemispheres. So these 2 albums really do go together and are definitely 2 of my favorite Rush albums. But I think Hemispheres is definitely in the top of my list for Rush albums that I love. But Hemispheres by Rush, with, of course, like I said, Cygnus X1 Book 2, Hemispheres, and then, of course, Circumstances, The Trees, and the fantastic closing instrumental, La Villa Strangiato. Hemispheres, Rush. The 6th one of the common prog albums that I'm showing, number 6 in the list, is, of course, a group that gets talked about a lot in the vinyl community. They are, of course, Yes. But I'm going to show this one because this one doesn't get a lot of love. And I remember even when this album came out, it didn't get a lot of love. And this is Yes's Drama. And Secrets Being Told. Yes's Drama is what drew me to Yes, and it will always be my favorite Yes album. That's right, Yes's Drama is my favorite Yes album. I mean, I knew Yes, and I had friends that were into Yes when I was a teenager, and certainly I knew, I've seen All Good People and Roundabout, and I did love And You and I from Close to the Edge, but I had never really bought a Yes album. Even though I loved all those songs, I had never really bought a Yes album. I had borrowed Yes albums from friends and recorded them on cassette tapes. I had Relayer, but really didn't grow to love Relayer until after Drama. But I'd recorded Relayer from a friend's and hadn't really given it a chance, but then grew to love Relayer a lot. And I'm, currently searching for a nice pressing of Relayer. That's one of the things on my wish list. But it was Drama that would finally sold me for Yes. And a lot of my friends, who are of course big Yes fans back in the day, they were kind of trashing Yes, going, John Anderson's gone, they got this new vocalist, got Jeff Downes in here and so on. It's not Yes anymore. But this album grabbed me. And I guess it was because I never really got into John Anderson's voice. And maybe it was one of the things that always held me back from getting into Yes when I was a teenager. Of course, now, I love John Anderson. I love all the Yes music. But when I was a teenager, John Anderson's voice just didn't capture me. And then this new voice in Drama just blew me away. Machine Messiah on here, Tempest Fusion. These songs just absolutely captured me. I spun this album like crazy. I mean, Machine Messiah, White Car, Doesn't Really Happen, Run Through the Light, Into the Lens, and of course Tempest Fusion, like I said. This album would be the album that finally got me into Yes hardcore, and then my love for Yes just continued after this album. Even though this particular lineup only made Drama, I absolutely adore this album. My favorite Yes album, and a Prog masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. So those were six very commonly shown Prog artists that we all know about, pretty much all know about. But the rest of this pile, a lot of these artists are not considered Prog artists, even though they've touched on Prog at some point in their career, or they're just, not well known. And the first one I'm going to show you, believe it or not, is a hard rock act, which are sometimes mistaken for a metal act because they tried to become a little bit on the hair metal side in the 80s. But I always looked at them as a hard rock band. But when they were first getting their feet wet in the business and trying to find their path, their debut album was Prog, 100% Prog. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a Prog masterpiece. And it's the Scorpions and Lonesome Crow. It's totally different than anything else the Scorpions ever recorded. This was Prog. I love this album, and this is a very, very, very rare promo copy on this kind of beer-colored vinyl. And I've shown this album before in my Rare Albums video, but this is the Scorpions. Check it out. Lonesome Crow. Give it a chance. It is Prog. Absolutely. I'm going mad. It all depends. Leave me. In Search of a Peace of Mind, which is fabulous. Inheritance, Action, and then of course Lonesome Crow, which is a 13-minute Prog masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. Scorpions and Lonesome Crow, an underrated Prog album, definitely an underrated Prog album. Next up, another underrated Prog album and group. I don't see the vinyl community talk about this group so much. I love this group. Their albums were hit and miss. They became very famous in around 1973 when they released this album, and they had a charting single from this album in North America called Hocus Pocus, with that yodeling and that just absolutely crazy guitar work. Hocus Pocus by Focus was a big, big hit, but by far not the best song on this album. This is Focus and Moving Wave, and this is Prog. That's right. Take Hocus Pocus aside and look at some of the other things. Moving Waves, Focus 2, but the Prog masterpiece on this album, and why I say this is another underrated Prog album, is Side 2, which is called Eruption, and it takes up the entire of Side 2. It's a song called Eruption that I think comes in, 22 and a half minutes. A Prog masterpiece, underrated. Eruption by Focus on the Moving Waves album. Another underrated Prog masterpiece, Focus, Moving Waves. Next up is another band that have had sort of fallen into various genres, but this particular album is considered, certainly according to Discogs, is considered Prog, and I consider it Prog too. It's loosely Prog. It's typical, mid-70s kind of Prog. And it is The Roaring Silence by Manfred Mann's Earth Band. And of course, featuring the cover of the great Bruce Springsteen song Blinded by the Light. But this is another great Prog album, underrated Prog album, Blinded by the Light. Singing the dolphin through. Waiter, there's a yawn in my ear. hence the yawn in his ear. This Side of Paradise, Questions, Starbird, Road to Babylon. This is a great album. And for Manfred Mann's Earth Band, The Roaring Silence, check it out. Another underrated prog album as far as I'm concerned. And you know, even ELO, I just really remembered I'm wearing ELO today. ELO even touched on prog in their career, and definitely early ELO was prog. Early Queen was prog. Golden Earring, one of my favorite bands of all time, if not my favorite band of all time. Heavy prog influence on their smash hit album Moontan, Vanilla Queen, Big Tree, Blue Sea, Are You Receiving Me? Prog masterpieces for sure. I mean, I could talk about a lot of different bands that have, you know, influenced me. You know, King Crimson and the Court of the Crimson King. I could have shown that today, but I'm trying to show things that you know, that people aren't showing. And in the Court of the Crimson King is the only real King Crimson album I liked, but it gets shown so much. So I'm trying to show you a few different things today. And next up, I've shown this album briefly before as well, but I really talked about it in great detail. And this is an artist that people know more as a kind of a pop act. Though the Turn of a Friendly Card album, some people might say it's prog, but a lot of people call these guys more art pop than prog. But certainly this album is very prog influenced. And this is the Alan Parsons Project and I, Robot. I love this album. This album is fantastic. Probably my favorite Alan Parsons album of them all. I, Robot by the Alan Parsons Project. And of course, people know, and I've said it before, Alan Parsons responsible for being the engineer who engineered Abbey Road and engineered Dark Side of the Moon before going out on his own and doing his own music, and he still continues to this day. But I, Robot by the Alan Parsons Project, definitely a prog masterpiece with the fantastic instrumental I, Robot. Alan Parsons Project, I, Robot, another underrated prog album. Next up, we're gonna jump ahead, and that was all stuff that, you know, pretty much all came out in the 70s. I believe all those things I showed you all came out in the 70s. Now we're going to fast forward to some really modern examples of prog. This is some EDM, I think, as the kids call it now, EDM. But this is progressive trance. Progressive trance. This is a progressive trance, house trance band. I call them trance. They are progressive. I think they're more trance than anything. And I'll be doing a trance video in the very near future. But this is progressive trance and a progressive trance artist, and this album is, I believe, from 2014 or something like that. 2015, that was pretty close. And this is the trance group Above and Beyond, and this is progressive trance. That's right, progressive trance. This is Above and Beyond, but the very keyboard driven, though, you know, have that typical EDM beat and trance beat, but it is wonderful. Clearly, you put this on and give this a spin. I highly recommend this album, Above and Beyond. We are all we need. It's progressive trance, but the cues taken from, you know, 70s progressive music is all written all over this thing. This is a really fine example of modern progressive influence. So progressive trance, Above and Beyond. I put this in the category of prog, modern EDM prog, Above and Beyond. We are all we need. Check it out. I love this album. Next up is some progressive metal. Some people classify this as progressive rock, more on the progressive metal side, more on the kind of the Tool side. But this is a gorgeous album, absolutely gorgeous album. Once again, it has the 70s progressive rock mark all over it. This is a band that has been goth, they've been alternative, they've been doom metal, they've been everything. And this particular album, which came out, I believe, in 2017, this particular album is progressive rock all the way, or progressive metal. They are Anathema, and this is The Optimist. Anathema, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Anathema, The Optimist, and this is a absolutely spectacular album. Definitely highly prog influenced. You know, Discogs puts this down as progressive rock. I say more progressive metal, but it's a fine line. A fantastic album. The highlight track on here is Springfield. You've got You know, leaving it all behind, Endless Ways, The Optimist, San Francisco, Springfield, Ghosts, Can't Let Go, Close Your Eyes, Wildfires, Back to the Street. Check this album out. It is absolutely spectacular. Anathema and The Optimist. Some fantastic modern prog. Next up, we're down to our last three artists here. We're going back to the 70s now, and the reason I put these last three here is they're all Canadian artists. So a lot of people outside of Canada may not have heard of these artists, and I'm certainly these first two artists, nobody probably, very few people have already heard of. So all you people in the UK and Europe and the United States, you're going to have to maybe dig or go on Discogs to find these albums, because I don't think these albums are widely known outside of Canada or even available outside of Canada. But they are all masterpieces for me. The first one up, and I've shown this album before, is by a local Toronto band called FM, and this is Black Noise, and this is one of the best prog albums to come out of Toronto, period. Their next albums, they moved a little more poppy in their successive albums, but Black Noise is a masterpiece by the group FM. They were a trio of Cameron Hawkins on synthesizer, bass guitar, piano, and lead vocals, Martin Deller, drums, percussion, and synthesizer, and Nash the Slash, the electric violinist and mandolinist, and glockenspiel and vocals. Nash the Slash, he used to come out dressed like the Invisible Man on stage. He never showed his face. He was all in bandage, had a raincoat, had a trench coat and a hat. Nash the Slash. But this album, Phasers on Stun, 1 O'Clock Tomorrow, Hours Journey, Dialing for Dharma, Slaughter in Robot Village, Alderan, and the massive 10-minute epic Black Noise at the end. This is prog at its best. Probably one of the best single prog releases to ever come out of Canada, as far as I am concerned. This is a masterpiece. Find it, people. Check it out. Highly, highly, highly recommend. An underrated album, certainly in the rest of the world. Very popular here in Toronto and Canada. FM, Black Noise. Any prog collector and enthusiast needs this album in their collection. FM, Black Noise. And another band that I love, and I'm going to show you three things from them, because it was hard to just pick one, because I think the first three kind of make up a really great trilogy. And I've briefly talked about this artist on my channel, but I'm going to bring them up because they are also one of my all-time favorite prog artists. Though as they progressed, they did move. They've constantly changed their style a little bit, and they've always retained their prog roots. And prog has always shown through on all their albums, but some of their albums in their 80s got much more commercial and poppy. But then going into the 90s and 2000 and 2010s, they returned to their prog roots, and they have a very large catalog and have a brand new album coming out this March 12th that I am so excited for, because they had said they were retiring a couple of years ago and even did a farewell tour. And here they are with a brand new album called Symmetry, coming March 12th on vinyl, and I am excited to get it. But they are a band called Saga. That's right, Saga, the Canadian, another underrated prog band. They started off definitely at prog. This is another prog masterpiece. I would put this like the FM, Black Noise by FM. Saga's debut album, just called Saga, a prog masterpiece too. How Long, Humble Stance, Climbing the Ladder, Will It Be You, Chapter 4, The Perfectionist, Given the Money, Ice Nice, Tired World, Chapter 6. This is my original OG pressing. And I absolutely love this album. One of my favorite prog albums of all time. And like I said, another fantastic example of prog that came out of Canada. And it was followed up by their second album, Images of Twilight. Another just fantastic album, equally as good as their debut album, with It's Time, Chapter 3, See Them Smile, Slow Motion, You're Not Alone, Take It or Leave It, Images, Chapter 1, Hot to Cold, Mouse in a Maze, another fantastic album. That was their second album, and I'm just going to show their third album here, though they probably have close to 20 albums now, I think. I don't know the exact count, but it's going to be close to 20 albums, especially with this new album coming out, studio albums. And this is their third effort, and I think these three make a really great trilogy. And this was their third effort, Saga's Silent Night, with Don't Be Late, Chapter 2, What's It Gonna Be, Time to Go, Compromise, Too Much to Lose, Chapter 7, Help Me Out, Someone Should, and Careful Where You Step. And of course, Don't Be Late and Careful Where You Step are concert classic favorites that they play every concert. Silent Night by Saga, underrated prog act from Canada. Highly recommend people check them out. Try to find them. I cannot speak more strongly of Saga and FM from Canada. Number 15 in my most underrated and favorite prog artists and albums is a man I talk about all the time on my channel, and I'd be amiss to not include him in this video, and that's my friend Mark Anthony Kaye from Projekt Gemineye. And I'm showing you here his latest 2 albums. This is in the book in the year 3073, book 1. This is a test pressing that Mark gave me, which features Joe Bailey, another prog artist from the UK, trading off vocals and bass guitar on this, as well as some other bass players on this album as well, guest starring on this album. Fantastic album, absolutely fantastic album. And this, the reason why I had said about 2112 earlier, that I would mention later, is I feel that this album in the year 3073, book 1, and his latest release, which is currently only on CD, but coming out on vinyl in just a few weeks, in the year 3073, book 2, I can see a great influence from Rush's 2112 album and the 2112 epic song, and songs like Cygnus X1, books 1 and 2. Definitely I can see Mark got influence from those things by Rush to make these albums. There's a definite influence here. So if you like 2112, if you like Hemispheres, if you like A Farewell to Kings, Moving Pictures, you will love these 2 albums right here, because they're so heavily inspired by Rush for sure. Fantastic. This is progressive metal. Fantastic. And I've shown this album many times before, but I just received this album a week ago from Mark and gave it a test spin yesterday, and I look forward to the vinyl pressing. But I just gave this one a test spin yesterday, and it blew me away. Absolutely blew me away. Even better, I think, than book 1. And as I said earlier, Steve Hackett had a fellow playing on that live album by the name of Lee Pomeroy. Well, that bass player, Lee Pomeroy, appears on this album in book 2. Also, Joe Bailey trades off vocals with Mark Anthony Kaye once again on this album, and Joe Bailey's even on more vocals on this album than he was on book 1. And also David Donnelly on bass, and a real treat on here on the last song on this album called The Answered Prayer. Bass guitar on The Answered Prayer, done by Billy Sherwood of Yes, and you can hear him as soon as that song starts. You hear that fabulous Yes bass of Billy Sherwood, who's currently in Yes, on The Answered Prayer. This thing is fantastic, and very few albums. I mean, I'm always multitasking and doing things when I'm playing my music, and it takes a really special album to make me stop what I'm doing and sit down and listen, because we have busy lives, and so when I'm listening to music, obviously I'm enjoying the music, but I'm always reading something, or browsing the internet or something. I'm doing something. I'm always busy doing something, updating my Discogs, and the music's playing and I'm listening to it. But this album, when I put it on yesterday, I got 2 minutes into this album and I sat down and just listened, no distractions, listened to this album, because I was so impressed when Sacred Sun started. The intro in the dark, a little 2-minute intro in the dark, was fabulous. But when Sacred Sun started, I was blown away and I was hooked. And this is Mark's longest album, clocking at almost 45 minutes. A masterpiece. I'm sorry, but this is a masterpiece. I absolutely love this. Mark, you're a genius. You've done it with this album. This could be your best work ever. I look forward to the vinyl. People, check out Projekt Gemineye. You can find him on Bandcamp. He's an independent artist. Support him. You'll love him. The guest players on here, Billy Sherwood, Lee Pomeroy, everybody, Joe Bailey, they're all fantastic. Fantastic album. Underrated because it's new. So I hope it becomes a rated and loved album by the vinyl community and listeners all over the world. Fantastic job, Mark Anthony Kaye. Had to show this one, and definitely put you in my top 15 prog artists of all time. And those are my personal favorite top 15 prog artists / and/or albums. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, if you don't subscribe to my channel, please subscribe. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Thumbs up always make people feel good. Comments down below as usual. I always reply to my comments. Turn that notification bell on so you don't miss my videos. I try to post a video like this every Monday or Tuesday, sometimes later in the week. I'll be back again next week with another video. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at AGK_lifetime of vinyl, where I try to post my spin of the day every day. I hope you enjoyed my little journey into Progville. And I'll see you guys all very, very soon. Stay safe, everybody. And as I always say, rock and roll.